Check 1 2. There we go. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Four Laps Down. I'm Nathan here with my co-host, Mr. Daniel Ship. We're very excited tonight. We've got a great episode for you. A fantastic guest. We've been looking forward to this for a while now. But without further ado, Mr. Ship, I'm going to let you introduce our guest this evening.
Well, I mean, there's not a lot that we can say about this guy, and I appreciate more than anything him coming on. But this is the president, general manager, and a very familiar voice that you guys know all too well from PRN, Mr. Doug Rice. I believe he is still muted. Mr. Doug, how you? Yeah.
Nathan, Daniel, thanks so much for having me on tonight. I appreciate it. Always love to do a little bit of bench racing, so thanks for asking me to come aboard.
Hey, absolutely, and I mean it means the world when you think about where we've come from. We're now in week 5 of doing something like this. We've had aspects all the way from drivers to car chiefs to sponsors, all the way up to social media guys. So this is a whole nother aspect that these guys get to listen to. So I know a lot of people recognize you and stuff, but for the people at home that aren't really familiar with you, tell the guys at home about you.
Well, these days I am the lead anchor for the Performance Racing Network and president of the network. PRN does the broadcast at all of the Speedway Motorsports tracks. So, for instance, we'll do Charlotte. We're in Atlanta this weekend, Bristol Motor Speedway. We'll go out to Sonoma. So if it's a Speedway Motorsports track, we broadcast that. We also do a lot of other weekly and daily programs. So we produce something 365 days a year, but those are our bread and butter events.
So, and I know you talked about that because you guys do Fast Talk, which I've seen. I know you had that recently where you had, I believe it was Brad, had Jeff Hammonds on there. I can't remember the female's name.
Alexis Erickson,
Alexis,
who co-host with us. And that show's been on the air for over 25 years. Originally, it was Fast Talk with Benny Parsons.
Oh, wow.
And we had Benny on there up until, unfortunately, like 2 months before he passed away. And then we went through a series of drivers. And then I kind of took over the hosting role. And we've had some guest co-hosts since then: Jeff Hammond, Kyle Petty, Hermie Sadler, myself, Brad Gilley, and Alexis. And that's been a nice journey. And I really like where the show is now. It's kind of more entertainment based than it is stat based.
Yeah, because I mean, you guys do. I think the episode I watched, you did checkered flag, black flag, or green flag, black flag, one of the two.
Right.
And then you also, which was really cool, was the piece that you guys did talking about Atlanta and the last race that shut down. I mean, that was a whole introspect there.
Daniel, we had an opportunity to interview all of the drivers about a month ago on a virtual media day and ask them all about what do you remember about last year when you tried to go to Atlanta and race. And it's funny how those events and those minutes and days really stuck with people. We tend to remember where we were on 9/11 or before that, Pearl Harbor. People remember when sports shut down and what they were doing, especially people involved in that particular sport. And that will be partially played back in our broadcast in Atlanta as the intro to our race broadcast. And it was a really nice piece put together by our production director, Kent Bernhardt.
So in that aspect, you talked to the drivers. What about you? What do you remember from that day?
I was at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I had driven down to Atlanta a day early so I could go over on Thursday to Macon, Georgia. I'm a big classic rock fan, and I wanted to go over to the Allman Brothers Band Museum in Macon. And I got over there, and I remember at that time, things were starting to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in there, got to go to the museum. I think the next day it closed, and then drove to the Speedway and remember being on like a 3-hour conference call from NASCAR describing how they were going to do the race without fans and the protocols we were going through. Then we got to the track, and this was pre-masked. Nobody was wearing masks, a lot of hand sanitizers and trying to have as few people as possible. And we were there on Friday, and they said, we're going to change the schedule around. We'll let you know Saturday morning. Saturday morning, they came out and they said, we're going to run, or Friday morning, they came out and said, we're going to run both of the races on Saturday, the Xfinity and the Cup race. And then 2 hours later, my phone rang again and said, go home. And I was actually on the air on Sirius with Larry McReynolds when I got the text message from NASCAR saying we were done. And that was a really sobering moment because not much stops a race from happening. And then all of a sudden we're there, the teams are there, and it's go home. And all of us thought, okay, this will go 2 or 3 weeks and we'll be back in action. You know, none of us imagined that a year later we'd still be in the grips of this.
Yeah, and you look at, I think the news came out this week, Pocono, they're going to 50% this week. Charlotte, I think they're still at 30% right now, but depending on, what changes, I know that the governor was talking about it. So, during that time frame, what do you guys do? I mean, was your outlook bleak? Did Fast Talk continue through that period?
We kept doing our weekly show. We just felt like that was the right thing to do. We actually got a lot of cooperation from people to come on and be guests during that time. Fortunately, NASCAR didn't waste a lot of time in going to the iRacing deal. And they started serving up the winners of the iRacing as guests because they realized it was important to stay in front of people and to be relevant. So, we'd have Timmy Hill on and the other William Byron and the people that were winning those races, and folks were interested. And so we never dropped a show, a daily show or a weekly show, and kept plugging away. And sometimes it was a little bit challenging. We would go into the studios, we would social distance. We tried to be as practical as possible, but we were able to do 100% of our commitment.
So looking now at the beginning of this year, you feel better about it? Does it make you, because Atlanta was your guys' first race, I believe, right? For you to broadcast.
It was our second race last year. Okay. We did Vegas and then headed down to Atlanta. And when we were in Vegas, there was talk about COVID, but nobody imagined it was going to spiral out of control like it did.
Okay. So this year, was Echo Park 250, was that y'all's first race that you guys did for PRN?
We did the Vegas races, the Xfinity and Cup races this year.
Okay.
And we're, preparing to go down to Atlanta. I think they're going to have somewhere between 20 and 25,000 fans. They're sold out for what their capacity is. Mm-hmm. And so is Vegas, which tells me people are hungry. They want to get back out and do anything. And so they're ready to come back to the racetrack. And I think they have a real appetite to get out and soak in live sports for the moment.
Yeah, because I know I saw there was a tweet that got put out that said that viewership for the Phoenix race, I guess, was down on TV base, but the need and the ticket demands have been through the roof as far as going to there, since baseball's still in the off, kind of in spring training. Hockey still isn't allowing people. Racing right now is the really only extracurricular activity that's going on that's allowing people kind of that
professional wrestling.
I'm not
that's on a screen.
Well, some of them have people.
I'm not shocked that TV numbers have taken a little bit of dip, because what have we had to do over the last year except sit home and watch television? Mm-hmm. And I think if you're given any kind of alternative to go do something else, you're going to do that. But the demand for tickets, and I particularly am synced in with the Speedway Motorsports tracks. The dirt race at Bristol sold out. Atlanta sold out. Vegas was sold out. Admittedly, smaller capacity, but they sold out in 24 to 48 hours after putting up the tickets. That's a good sign. I think it's a good sign in the sense that people want entertainment. I know I'm going to go to the first concert I get a chance to go to. I don't really care who it is.
Exactly. So I think, Nate, are you going to it next week?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to going to the dirt race next week. We got tickets as soon as they released. As soon as they said we're doing dirt at Bristol in the spring, I called my buddies. We went. It was an impromptu trip last summer to the All-Star race. I'd never been to a race at Bristol. I'm about a 5-hour drive from there. And it was COVID. We were bored. And the governor of Tennessee said, hey, NASCAR, if you'll have it over here at Bristol, I'll allow it. And I'll allow 30,000 people. And they said, okay. And I said, I'm in. Whatever tickets cost, I don't care. I expected to pay $100, $200, $35 a seat. That's all it was.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. So we went. We had a great time. So when they said Bristol, well, and we said before we even left that weekend, we're like, because it's all buddies from where I live. I said, we're so close. There's no reason we're not going to at least one of these races weekends a year, right? So we'd already talked about it. Then they announced it was going to be on dirt. And we said, well, I like the night races, but I'm not missing this because they may only do it once. It might go poorly. You never know. And so we got our tickets right away. And we're gonna be there all day Friday for the heats, and all day Saturday for the heat races and the truck race. And the truck race I'm really looking forward to. We got an opportunity to be one of the first media outlets today to report on the big news out of Kyle Larson's camp. He's running that truck race with Nice Motorsports in the 44. With sponsorship from Circle B Diecast and Richmar Flores. So that was pretty cool news. Hearing a guy like him in the race, I mean, it's going to be really, really exciting, and definitely looking forward to getting down there. How do you think, Doug, if I could butt in with a question, how do you think NASCAR at its biggest stage, mixing with dirt track racing, how do you think that's going to be perceived by fans at large?
Well, you just kind of answered that question. You said, I can't wait to get there. I think the anticipation around this race is next to what I remember when we first raced at Indianapolis. People we're racing at Indianapolis. Now it's like we're racing on dirt. A lot of folks never thought that would happen again. They would never see this, that we might have an Xfinity race. We've had a couple of truck races at Eldora, but I don't think anybody realistically gave a lot of thought to this. This was pushed by Fox Television. They wanted something that would grab people's attention. And I think the big thing in this is that people that aren't even NASCAR fans or maybe just casual fans, they're going to watch some of this. They're going to be aware of it. I don't know what the product's going to look like out on the racetrack. I have no idea. It could be. I hope that it's somewhere in the middle. I want to see cautions. I want to see guys spinning out. I don't want them to go out there and run 250 laps clean, but I also don't want it to be something that every 5 laps somebody's backing into the wall. So if we can hit a happy medium between that, then I think everybody wins.
So are you up on your dirt racing lingo? Are you ready for it?
I know about the cushion. So I have been around dirt racing a little bit. We actually broadcast the World of Outlaw race that they had up there 20 years ago at Bristol. Okay. We are bringing in a guy named Lenny Baticki. Lenny does a weekly show for us, and he's a dirt track savant, and he's going to be down on pit road, and he's going to be kind of our eyes and ears for the actual racing surface itself. So we will know what's going to happen. We'll know if the track's taking rubber. We'll know if they've got to come out and wet it down. And I think one of the things that they're doing that I think is really genius is they're racing there a lot this weekend, and they're going to have thousands of laps on this surface before the trucks and the cup cars ever get there. So they're not going to go up there and be surprised and this thing turn into a disaster before their eyes. I think they're going to have a really good idea of how this surface is going to react.
If it's going to be a disaster, it'll be a disaster this weekend when everybody goes up to run the modifieds and
better that
and the Outlaws.
Better that than the Cup show on national television.
You know, the other thing that I think is cool about this is them having all of these different national dirt series come in the weeks ahead of time. Obviously it makes sense. Break the track in. It's a seasoned track at that point. But it also gives an opportunity for some of these guys that are going to be running next weekend to run this weekend and get a feel for the track. But more importantly, it gives these guys at the highest level of racing a really good reason to go down and give some love to these lower level series that they may ordinarily never be a part of, and bring, I think, a much needed spotlight to some of these smaller series. Corey LaJoie, for example, was running this weekend. First time he's ever ran on dirt. I mean, ever. Right? So it's like, here's a guy he's a great driver, but never ran on dirt. And you've got Austin Dillon and Chase Elliott, and there's probably a half dozen more that I'm forgetting of big A-list Cup drivers driving modifieds. When was the last time outside of the Chili Bowl that you ever see that? So I think it's pretty cool.
It's a win for a lot of minor series. A guy that lives across the street from me is from upstate New York. He raced dirt modifieds at a place called Dunhill 2 Speedway, won the series championship there. Doesn't watch NASCAR racing at all. And he put the squeeze on me to get him tickets so he could go to the Bristol dirt race. So I think this is going to bring some new eyeballs to NASCAR. And at the same time, I think some of the NASCAR folks are going to give a head nod to the dirt racing. This is a win-win. I've talked to Kenny Wallace about this a good bit because Kenny likes his dirt racing, and he's off every weekend doing something. And he thinks this is just a win across the board for everybody.
And I agree with you because, think about it. A lot of these smaller modifieds, they race at small tracks that, 100, 150, 200 people. When you put them in the world's largest coliseum that goes up, to the heavens in a massive stadium, hey guys, and I think the picture, I think Brandon Brown had posted it, the infield looks like a giant Walmart parking lot of just modifieds, just all sitting there. And this is great exposure for them as well.
And for some of these folks that are racing there this weekend, this will be the biggest venue they ever race in their entire racing career. And I'm not putting them down on that, but it's going to be bigger than their local Cherokee Speedway that they're running at on Saturday nights. So this is a great opportunity for them to get some spotlight. Lots of eyeballs are going to be on these races. And, I just applaud NASCAR, Bristol, Fox Television for being willing to do something different, to shake things up. We've talked now for 15 minutes about nothing but the dirt race at Bristol. If this is just another race at Bristol in the spring, we're not doing this. And they have great races up there. That place produces, according to Jeff Gluck's poll, the best races every year for 5 years running. So they're taking a chance. But I like the idea of what they're doing. They also realized, too, attendance had fallen off a great deal on that spring race during the year. When we get past COVID, if this dirt thing works, I think they've hit a home run. I think this is a lot like taking a chance, and I'm talking about my own company here, in the sense that Charlotte took the chance with the Roval. A lot of people said this is going to be a disaster. It's going to be a wreck fest. Why are we doing this? And turns out now 3 years later, people are kind of keen on the Roval, and it's worked. But you have to be willing to take that opportunity and take that chance to make it work.
Absolutely. And I was at the Roval race in October this past year when, it was going to rain. It wasn't going to rain. The guys were on slicks. They were on dries. They didn't know. And Chase, he wrecks, comes back, comes to the front. The crowd was great. We were separated. And that's kind of one of those feelings of, well, if that works, well, look what happens next. Indianapolis, they change it to a road course now. Look at COTA. COTA's coming into play this year. So they're really starting to branch out. And I agree with you. I think NASCAR's looking at, okay, what's the next thing that can grab somebody's attention rather than going to a Dover a second time or Chicagoland. Those are those mile and a half tracks. What's that kind of edgy thing that we can do?
Well, I think that there was a reason that some of the tracks lost their races. Obviously, one of the Dover races is moving to Nashville Super Speedway. Kentucky Speedway, they've shipped that race down to Atlanta. I think Atlanta is a better competitive racetrack than Kentucky, although the last couple of races, they were pretty good. And Chicagoland, I'm going to be honest, and I'm not dissing anybody. I can't remember anything memorable from Chicagoland outside of the big orange breaking off of the sign rolling down the backstretch. It never produced.
I remember that.
Those kind of magic moments that you want. Now it might have. If there's an expert on Chicagoland, they come back, Doug, don't you remember X? And the fact is, I don't. It's not a legacy speedway. But the fact that NASCAR is going to COTA, I had a chance to go down there and visit about a month ago in Austin. And my impression was that it's like a racetrack built by aliens. I mean, like outer space aliens. And they just dropped it out in Texas. and it's massive. It's almost 3.5 miles in length.
Hmm.
It looks like something I would have built with my Aurora Flex Track slot car kit 50 years ago, and I would have put all these turns and switchbacks in it. I think it's going to be a fantastic venue. I think NASCAR is going to knock it out of the park there too. And I'm not trying to be jingoistic for NASCAR tonight, but I'm just really tickled at the direction we're headed in right now.
So we did have a question in the chat, and it's kind of I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about, because they got rid of Eldora for the trucks. What about Cups going to Eldora? I don't. That's what somebody What's your thoughts about Eldora?
I think let's see how this works at Bristol, and if the show is watchable and compatible like I think it's going to be, then I think you could open this up for 2 times a year. They're already going to have the expense in building these cars to race at Bristol. I think you can transfer them up there. We might be getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Eldora produced, I felt like the first 2 or 3 truck races there were the best. I felt like it got a little bit tame after that. But, I love that speedway. Obviously, that's Tony Stewart's track. I know Roger Slack, the guy that runs the place. So I hope that they get a big prize somewhere down the road.
So I'll kind of switch gears with you because it's near and dear to my heart is older tracks, tracks that aren't around anymore. Because Rockingham is all of about 45 minutes from me. I know that a story came out recently about Nashville Fairgrounds and their government working. I think it was like $10 million. They would, but it's going to take a while to rebuild. North Wilkesboro, that's always been close to me. Do you see anything like that coming in your mindset? Something like those tracks coming back? I know they were doing work to Rockingham. I know they were going to have a Cars Tour race in October. I know they were repainting and all that. But what's your take on these old tracks?
Let's tackle the Fairgrounds Raceway. Somewhere down the road, they're going to have a race. I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be trucks, Xfinity Cup. That's Speedway Motorsports. That's the company that I work for, working in conjunction with the city of Nashville. I don't know all the minutia. That track needs a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It won't be next year, I don't think. To get in there and refurbish that place and bring it up to the standards of what today's sports fan wants is going to take a lot of work. But I feel pretty confident that at some point in time, we're going to see people racing at some level in one of the NASCAR Premier Series at Nashville Fairgrounds Raceway. At Rockingham, North Carolina Motor Speedway, I'd like to see them racing there, but you got to remember, Andy Hillenberg bought into that place, brought it back. They had a truck race. They had a big crowd show up the first time. The second time, crickets. You've got to be willing to show up, because I don't think the NASCAR Cup Series is ever going back to Rockingham. It's far, and you know this. You live in Fayetteville. It's not close to anything.
No, it isn't.
I mean, hotel rooms, everything is an absolute premium. For North Wilkesboro is too far gone to ever be refurbished. Okay. My wife and I, one of our very first dates, we went to a race at North Wilkesboro, and the place was dilapidated then. For a lot of people, they have this romanticized idea of that racetrack, and I love it. I spent a lot of time there. I went to a lot of races there. But to bring that place back to make it race worthy, you would have to spend way more money than you would ever make back on it. And that's not a good business model. Yeah, I think what Dale Jr. did by bringing it back as an iRacing venue was brilliant. But, things have their days. The original Yankee Stadium is not there anymore. And that's kind of a shame, but we have to move on. And I'm not saying that every new racetrack that has been built is better than what we left behind either.
So what are your thoughts, a couple weeks ago? It's interesting that you say North Wilkesboro is so far gone you could never do anything with it. I mean, just probably 3 weeks ago, Joey Logano posted something on Twitter teasing something. I mean, it's a picture of him at the track, all of it blown to smithereens, and him saying stay tuned. I mean, here's a young guy who's made enough money to have the influence to get other individuals with money together to do something. I mean, what do you think their plans are?
I think the only person in our sport, I think the most influential person in our sport is Dale Earnhardt Jr., bar none. More than the president of NASCAR, more than anybody else. When Junior speaks, people pay attention to what he says. He has gravitas. He also has a lot of money, and he has the public attention. So he can command attention to things. But to go in there to make that place race worthy, to put in safer barriers, to build it up and the amenities around it. I mean, we're talking about bathrooms and parking and everything else. You're talking about tons and tons of money. And as wealthy as Logano and Earnhardt are, I don't know that that's where they want to sink their money. I don't know what they're teaching. If they want to bring it back, great. That it would be really cool, but that you're talking about, they're talking about $50 million to bring the fairgrounds raceway back in Nashville. I think you'd be looking at that same kind of money for North Wilkesboro.
I mean, it's definitely a lot. It's definitely a lot, but also,
I mean, that would be cool. It's 45 minutes from where I live. I'd love for them to race back up there again.
Yeah, but I guess I would just say as a fan, being optimistic, right? Because I always try to look at the silver linings and the bright side. I mean, say you got, Junior, Logano, 4 or 5 of these drivers that have been around a while. I mean, Jeff Gordon's worth a couple $100 million. They could realistically, if they wanted to say, listen, we're going to put the money in, we're going to bring it back because we want to do it. And at the end of the day, if we can sell it off to a management group in 10 years and get back 20% of what we put into it, I mean, what's to say that they don't want to do it just for the hell of it, just for old time's sake?
Well, that's kind of out of my purview. If those guys if they want to sink that kind of money into that, good on them. I just think that kind of money that it would take, they would probably find another way to spend it. But that's just me. Yeah. But if somebody wants to bring back North Wilkesboro, more power to them. But it would be a monstrous investment to bring that up to code and to get it race ready. And then you have to get a date. That doesn't seem to be as hard now as it used to be.
No.
I wouldn't be shocked if at some point down the road NASCAR doesn't add dates. With the flexibility they've shown in the schedule now, I think they could do that. I don't think 36 is the magic number that it used to be, because I don't think they'd be afraid of running a Wednesday or a Thursday night race somewhere.
Well, I mean, we saw that when it came back from COVID. I mean, they ran Darlington on a Wednesday and then ran Darlington again, that Saturday or Sunday? I mean, they can do
I
it.
mean, we ran 2 races at Charlotte in the same week. We ran substituted for the Sonoma race and then turned around and ran the Coca-Cola 600. So that's one thing I think the pandemic did, is it gave NASCAR license to be flexible and to do things that they never would have done before. And I've got to applaud them for that. They took a lot of chances and almost all of them paid off.
Well, and then in that same instance, qualifying and practice. I mean, you haven't done that. You're doing qualifying and practice for 6 or 8 events.
8 races this year.
8 races this year. But other than that, it's luck of the draw. This formula of your fastest speeds, your finishing position mixed with, I can't remember. I think it's a Bob Pockrass thing. I think
it's pretty much a Rubik's Cube of math. But I have yet to have a fan tweet me, text me, talk to me in person and say, man, I really misqualified.
Really?
Because they don't. Not as a group. I have not had any great outcry from people saying, man, bring back qualifying. I think they missed practice because you got a good idea of who was going to be good and who might be out to lunch in practice. Qualifying got to where it wasn't telling you anything, and it used up a lot of time and resources on these race teams that they can apply to go racing.
Yeah, but what about some of these guys like Jordan Anderson, right? So he doesn't qualify where he wanted to for the Daytona or for the Xfinity race at Daytona.
Xfinity race.
And so as a result, because of the
formula, it gets rained out. Yeah, I mean that's
that's right. It's because it got rained out, not because it got qualified, but because he's a brand new Xfinity team. I mean, the guy's been not self-funded, but I mean he's been an owner driver in the Truck Series for 3-4 years now. Granted, he's got some new family connections that get him opportunities, and good for him. But at the same time, it gets rained out. He can't control that. Nobody can control that. He's got no owner's points. He is. Rumor has it that there were some points available to be bought, and he didn't have the capital to play with some of the guys that wanted to buy them. So he's sitting on the sidelines. He had big plans for this team for this year, and he's sitting on the sidelines and scrambling. There's people's jobs on the line.
That's truly unfortunate. But I think in the bigger picture of things, and I'm very well aware of that situation, that for these race teams going to the races with limited amount of people, and they're never going to get back to the number of people that we had at the racetrack 5 years ago, because they've proven we can go and have races with a smaller number of people. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think that you're going to have the garage busting, it seems, of team members. And it takes a lot of work to put in the qualifying setup and get a car ready to qualify, turn in that qualifying lap, and then break it down and turn it around to get race ready. I think we will see qualifying return on a limited basis at what they consider to be marquee or first-time events. I think there will always be qualifying for the Daytona 500, the Coke 600, and a handful of other events. But I don't know that we're going to see it week in and week out.
And, I've noticed, and it might just be my noticing, is that without qualifying in practice, I've noticed that there's been a lot less engine failure cars. I haven't seen that as much, and I don't know if that's, them being able to work it out prior to the race and not having the practice and the qualifying and the stress on that motor prior to, but I have noticed a lot less of engine failure. I guess that's just
Daniel, I think the trend has been over the years, though, to see a lot less engine failure, simply because the engine builders, and there's only a handful of them now, are so much better at putting these together. 500-mile races were partly designed because that's as long as an engine could last. That's why the Indianapolis 500 is 500 miles, because that was the extreme distance that they expected the internal combustion engine to run, and NASCAR adopted that same formula. It could be the Coca-Cola 1000, and they wouldn't be burping engines. They're just that good at building them and making them bulletproof. That's not saying they work at their peak performance all the time, but engine failures almost become a dinosaur. It just doesn't happen that much anymore, even with the teams that are running on small budgets.
So I want to flip to this. So we'll start with this. What got you into sports broadcasting? Because I know it was baseball and doing my local football and high school games at my high school. So what got you into it?
I grew up listening to the radio. When I was born in 1955, but I listened to a lot of sports on the radio, especially the Atlanta Braves, and I would listen to them every night. Milo Hamilton and Ernie Johnson and Pete Van Wieren, and I would stay up and even listen when they would play the West Coast teams, when they would play the Giants or the Dodgers, and I'd be in my bed flipping the baseball cards out as they would do the lineups. And these guys were storytellers. As much as they were play-by-play guys, they told stories. And I thought, this has got to be the best job in the world. And they would talk about, they'd be in Chicago, and one of them would go, wow, the wind's blowing from the stockyards tonight. You can really tell it. And just that just entranced me. And I loved radio all my life. I thought I was going to be a DJ at one point. I didn't have the chops for that. But sportscasting kind of came late in my game. I dabbled in it at Appalachian State on the campus radio station. Mm-hmm. But then when I took a job at a local radio station, a week before high school football season started, the longtime play-by-play guy on the FM radio station quit. And they said, does anybody want to do this? And I raised my hand. I said, well, I played high school football. I know a little bit about it. I didn't know anything about broadcasting it. And the next thing I know, I'm doing the high school football game of the week. And then a year later, I was doing the high school game of the week, and then the local Division II college, Catawba College, I was doing their play-by-play. And the only big league sport we had in North Carolina for years was stock car racing. Yep. So I would go down to Charlotte and string for United Press International or Associated Press or one of those groups and cover it for them. and more I kind of became a fan of the sport, started covering it. And one thing led to another. And Ed Clark, who was running the PR department at Charlotte, called me up and offered me a job to come down and work with PRN. And at that time, PRN did 2 races a year. We did the 2 Charlotte races. When I started there, we were on the air 4 days a year. We did the 2 Cup races at Charlotte and what was then the Busch Series. And now, you know, Bruton's bought a lot more properties, and so the network's grown. But I have loved radio ever since I can remember listening to it for the first time.
So your very first race was at the Charlotte race. What year was it?
I want to think the first one that I was on the air was 1990.
All right,
And I was working pits then. I had not moved up to the booth. I remember interviewing Rusty Wallace after he won a race there. And I think that same year, Ken Schrader won the 500-mile race. And I interviewed him in Victory Lane. And then as time went on, progressed on, and I moved up into the booth in 92 with Mark Garrow. And Mark and I have been teamed together in the booth with PRN ever since.
I guess it kind of, you know, it's weird how those things, I guess, work. Because, I mean, you guys, I mean, so the way it works now, do you guys travel now to the racetracks? You're not doing them at home or from a studio?
No, we're at the racetracks. A lot of sports guys are doing them from their living rooms or in a studio setting. We've been really lucky with NASCAR that we've been able to go and do them in person. We had to pare back a lot of people last year. This year, they're letting us bring 1 or 2 more, but we're still at the racetrack, obviously having to observe all the protocols, wearing masks. We don't wear masks in the booth because you just can't project well, but our pit reporters wear a mask, and we're trying to obey all the rules we can. NASCAR tells you have to or you will leave. But no, we're at the venue, which is really great. I'll be in Atlanta this weekend and Bristol the following weekend. And so our sport's been very, very lucky. A lot of my buddies that work other sports, like I said, they have broadcast basketball and football games literally sitting in their living room watching a 15-inch monitor.
No, I can remember watching, I think it was one of the ESPN broadcasts for spring training games, and Perez and all of them they're sitting in their office just like this. And they have their monitor, and they're just watching their monitor, broadcasting as if they're there. And I think that's the good thing.
You can tell, because I'm a big Braves fan, that the Braves guys were in a studio because it would be a base hit, and there's just a natural delay between the time I'm seeing it on television and they're calling it a base hit to left field. So we haven't had to go through with that. If we had to, we would, but I think we're past all that now, hopefully.
So your first race was Charlotte 1990. Let me ask you this. What is your favorite race that you've ever called? Could be a specific track, could be a specific individual race. I mean, what sticks out in your mind?
A couple. I get to work with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network every year doing the Brickyard 400. And the first one that Tony Stewart won, and this was back when Indianapolis was still getting 200,000 people at the races. And Tony took the lead, and you could hear the crowd sort of building. You could hear the fans stomping and screaming and getting excited 5 laps in the finish. And watching him and getting to call his win, I still get chill bumps thinking about it because the place was just electric. And I thought, don't blow this. Get this call right. Don't overhype it, but make this work. And that was a big day for me. And actually, one was just recently, the first Roval race at Charlotte. There was so much hype around that race coming in and so much doom and gloom. And it became really apparent halfway through, it wasn't going to be a crash fest. There was one big wreck where everybody ran into turn 1 and like 4 or 5 cars got wrecked. But outside of that, it was a fairly tame race. But it comes down to the end, and it's Jimmy Johnson trying to break this long losing streak and Martin Truex Jr. And they wreck each other out. And the lap before, Mark Garrow told me, he goes, Doug, remember, they're not going to come off 4 and drive back to the start-finish line. They have to clear that chicane. One of them could overshoot it and blow the race. And I thought, good point. And I remember that. And here they come, and they run into the chicane. They both crash each other out, and Dave Blaney drives through at 35 miles an hour and wins the race. And that was a really good race that lived up to the hype. And I was the PA announcer at Charlotte for the first night race at the All-Star race, the one hot night. I was in the PA booth for that. And I'm sure I was just screaming out of control, but that was pretty good too. Watching Kyle Petty and Davey Allison slide across the start finish line.
Oh man.
Oh, it was that race. Oh, what a finish.
Yeah.
What a finish. What so aside from races, I mean, who have been some of your favorite drivers, past or present, to watch? Because you've seen a lot. Who's been your favorites?
I grew up a Richard Petty fan, not in his heyday, not when he was winning every week. By the time I became a Petty fan, it was kind of novel if he won, but I loved Richard Petty. And getting to know him after the fact added to that. Tony Stewart was fun to watch because he was fearless. I got the sense Tony didn't care. If he needed to move you out of the way, he would, and he wouldn't apologize and he wouldn't back down. Earnhardt was a lot of fun to watch. But those two are kind of mirror images of each other. Fearless, take no prisoners. I'm here to win the race. And if I can't win the race, I really don't care what happens to anybody else. So those are kind of easy answers. But one of the best that I ever watched was Darrell Waltrip in his heyday. When he was winning races, that's when my wife and I were big fans and going to a lot of races. And we went thinking, okay, we're going to watch Darrell win. And if he doesn't, we'll pull for somebody else, because we were not DW fans. We were at the Coca-Cola 600. I think it was 1980 when Benny Parsons beat him as the sun was going down. It had 2 rain delays and it was literally dark. And Benny passed him. They passed each other, I think, 8 times in the last 3 laps. But Darrell Waltrip, people forget because of all of his shenanigans on television, is one of the best drivers ever come down the pipe.
Well, I know, because I think it was that special they aired on Fox, in the blink of an eye. That's what it was called.
Right.
With Michael, and about Dale, and how Michael even said it, that that was the epitome, or Darrell was the epitome, that's who he wanted to grow up to be, and all the winnings, and that's what carried him to getting that recognition and getting that opportunity to race. So is there something that you'd want to call that's not NASCAR?
I got to do that about 5 years ago. Worked out a promotion deal that I got to go to Indianapolis and work on the radio broadcast crew at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And I worked pits for them, and then Shell Oil worked it out to where I could get on a private jet and fly down to Charlotte in time to anchor the Coca-Cola 600. They did this big promotion called the Doug Double. So I got to work an Indianapolis 500 broadcast. And, there have only been so many of those. So to get my voice on that broadcast, that was pretty special. I would love to, before I hang up my microphone, have a chance to go work a Daytona 500. I'd love to be able to go down there and hang out with the guys from the Motor Racing Network and call a lap or two of that race, just because that's the penultimate race in the NASCAR world. And outside of that, no, I've gotten to do an Indy 500, and that's good enough.
You don't want to do a Braves game? You don't want to do a March Madness game?
My basketball skills are weak. I think I could do an inning or two of a Braves game if you let me study up. Here's the thing in broadcasting is that the higher up you go, the more information is available at your fingertips. Mm-hmm. I did a high school football game last week, and we begged the ADs from the schools to send us materials. And by the time we got there, we had numerical rosters, and that was it.
That was
because they're busy, especially right now. They're strapped for people with the COVID situation. So, but as you move up, more information is available. When I was doing Division II college football for Catawba, we went and played Davidson. Well, Davidson was an NCAA school.
Yep.
And at the end of the quarter, the sports information director comes in and hands us stats. And I'm like, this is manna from heaven. I've never seen this. I actually know how many yards we've gained and how many first downs we've had. And as the higher up you go, the easier the information flow becomes.
It's a lot to be said about resources,
I would love to call it Atlanta Falcons game. If I could, if they would let me audition for that, that would be a lot of fun.
Wait, you're not a Panthers fan?
I did public address for Appalachian State, which is where I went to college, for 2 years for their football program. PA is a lot of fun too, because you get to scream and that was a lot of fun. But I'd like to call some college football games on the radio. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
So you're not a Panthers fan?
I like the Panthers. I had season tickets for 5 years, but I was a Falcons fan before the Panthers ever became a thing. Okay. And I wasn't going to drop my team. I mean, in my man cave, there's a Panthers wall clock and there's a Falcons wall clock. And I know those two don't play well together, but that's who I am.
So outside of racing, which has pretty much been, your public life for 30 plus years, what are the things, what are some things you're into? What are you interested in that doesn't involve going fast and turning left?
I'm a history buff. I love history, especially military history, World War II history, Civil War. I probably have 150 books on the Civil War. I'm not saying I've read all of them, but I'm fascinated by the Civil War, as a lot of people that grow up in the South are. There just seems to be an inbred fascination with that. So I love history, and I am a sci-fi geek to my very core. I have gone to Comic-Con in Atlanta, which is a lot actually, I think it's Comic-Con in Atlanta and Dragon Con in California. I've gone to the big sci-fi festivals. I love science fiction, Star Trek, Star Wars, Babylon 5. All of that stuff just fascinates me. And that's been from a very early age. And the world of NASCAR, stock car racing, and science fiction seldom meet. There aren't a lot of other fellow sci-fi geeks in my world, but those are things I like. I'm an occasional golfer. I enjoy that. I'm not very good at it.
Right there
I
with
have
you.
one daughter. And she's given me a lovely grandson. He's almost 4. But those are the things that keep me busy. But I do love science fiction. You give me a good sci-fi series on Netflix, and I'll binge out for 3 days.
So when you go to Comic-Con, do you get all dressed up and cosplay and wear
I was going to ask that.
No, I'm not that far, but I know we went to Atlanta, myself and Brad Gilley, and it might have been a Hilton, and they have a big circular bar area that everybody that does dress up in costume hangs out there. So you might see a stormtrooper 1 minute, and here comes Darth Vader walking by the next minute, or people dressed up as Genie from I Dream of Genie, and or any one of the Marvel characters, and it's kind of cool. I mean, science fiction is innocent in some ways. It's an adult playground, and I've always enjoyed it.
So
yeah, my son is big into Star Wars. Probably the last month, all he watches on Disney Plus is the Star Wars movies, and he's big diecast collector. We've got over 100 or so diecast for him, but now it's been a sharp shift, and now it's been Star Wars Battlefleet ships. So now I have the Millennium Falcon. I've got Vader's ship. I've got an X-wing somewhere. I've got Darth Maul's little hover around scooter.
Right.
I've got Mandalorian out the wazoo. His bed sheets are now changed from racing to Star Wars. Yeah, it's been a big shift.
My son-in-law, my daughter's husband, loves Star Wars, and he is buying all the Lego things. So for me to have to furnish Christmas gifts, all of a sudden the price of a Christmas gift has gone up. If you haven't priced Legos, they're really proud of their kids.
They're like $80. I saw one for a Yoda to put one together. It's like $80 or $90. Now, granted, it's about this big, but I was like, not for a 6-year-old. You're not getting that.
You look at an Imperial Death Star. It's way north of $80. Let's just put it that way. My son-in-law is not getting that from me. He's not getting the Lego Death Star from me.
Imagine that as like an anniversary gift. Like, hey,
Yeah.
here's your new kitchenware set. Here's your new knives. Oh, here's your Lego Death Star kit.
Yeah. No.
Hey, you don't have to stop being a kid if you don't want to be. So
I have a tree back here in my man cave that is decorated with Hallmark Star Trek and Star Wars ornaments and a autographed stand up of Leonard Nimoy beside it. I got to meet Leonard Nimoy, had lunch with him one day, and I'm seldom starstruck. And he was exceptionally cool. He was a neat guy, very soft spoken, and very much into what we were doing. As he came over and sat in the booth for a half an hour while we broadcast the Coca-Cola 600 one year.
So who's the big name that you've met out of NASCAR? Is it Leonard? What's the name that you go? Oh man,
hard to beat Leonard Nimoy. I mean, for me personally, to meet the guy that I've watched for thousands of hours in my living room. Yeah, that's Chuck Norris also came up to the booth one time, and you kind of stand at attention when he's in there, and he was very down to earth. I got him to do some of the Chuck Norris lines, that the little meme type lines that he does, and he was very gracious. This sport, doing this has afforded me the opportunity to meet some celebrities, and for the most part, all of them have been very gracious and very friendly. Only a couple of them have not been that well.
Don't forget, Chuck Norris doesn't read books. He just stares at them until the information goes in his head.
Yeah.
Just saying. And I know we talked about this beforehand, before we came on the air. Is the most exciting thing you've done out of NASCAR jump out of a perfectly good airplane? Is that the most exciting thing?
It's definitely got to be up there as one of the craziest things you've done.
It is way up the list. They were doing a promotional deal, and I got to go to Fort Bragg with the Golden Knights, and as you said, jump out of a perfectly good airplane. So that was a real kick. I got to go up in an F-18 out at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas several years ago, and they spent more time briefing you as to how to get out of the plane if something went wrong than they actually did flying. And I'm going like, if the plane crashes, I'll be in it. I've not followed any of this, but that was exceptionally cool because you got to go up and the guy gives you the stick. I mean, obviously he's there flying the plane, but he let me barrel roll it and do some things, and that was really cool. Those are a couple of highlight moments of things that I've gotten to do because I'm involved in NASCAR. Having a, I guess, regular job would never let you get to do.
Yeah, I don't get to do that. How about you? You get to do that, Nate?
Fly airplanes?
Yeah.
I don't have much interest.
It's not like that happens every day. Okay.
That is true.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen every day.
Now, granted, I would get behind the wheel of a stock car.
I've done it. I did it at Charlotte last year or 2 years ago. I did it.
But I don't have much interest in getting behind the yoke of a plane or in a cockpit. And now, a small plane, like if Chase Elliott called me up and said, "Hey, I got a new Cessna. We're gonna go run. We're gonna go run a Cessna. Do you want to come fly it with me?" I'd say, "Sure, let's go." But
be cool.
But if someone's like, "Hey, do you want to fly this 747 with a bunch of people in the back?" I'd say, "Nah, I'm good. I'm good right here."
Probably not. Yeah, that'd probably be something good to wave off.
Yeah.
I have done a couple of the driving schools because PRN's offices are at Charlotte Motor Speedway. I have never wanted to drive a race car competitively. It's not anything, and I'm not a motorhead. I don't know much about cars. I know what they do to make cars go faster and how they work on them during the race, but I'm not a gear guy. I don't want to pull the transmission out of a Buick. None of that interests me at all. My love is calling the action out on the racetrack and making that into a story.
When you got into broadcasting, did you have aspirations? I mean, because we can all be honest here. you're one of the legendary broadcasters in sports broadcasting. Never mind motorsports. Did you have aspirations of being, up there from, in stature, broadcasting with guys like, Vin Scully and Pat Summerall, some of these greats of sports broadcasting? And how does it feel to know that fans of our sport hold you in the same regard as do baseball fans of, Vin Scully?
Well, that's very flattering. First off, thank you.
Mhm.
When I first got into radio, I thought I aspired to be the next Casey Kasem, and play music and be an on-air announcer. And I actually worked in radio as an on-air personality. I think today the way it's done, of talking to people and getting them to talk about issues in their towns and things like that and telling stories, I could do that. I never was good at what was then being that energetic rock jock type thing. And then I realized when I went over and started dabbling in sports that I felt like, okay, I'm very at home here. This is much more to my liking. And, I've had a very fortuitous ride. I've worked for a company that has let me make mistakes and bounce back from them. And I will say this, and I've said this publicly before, of working for Speedway Motorsports, I have never once been brought in and said, we didn't like what you said. You need to change how you're doing this. They have given me a lot of runway. I feel like part of that is because I've never given them that reason, but they've also never put the handcuffs on me for what I can and can't say. Now they might tell me, we need you to promote this. Well, that's fine. I work for this company, so I'll do that. But they've given me a lot of leeway and the network a lot of leeway in what we've been able to say.
When did you become president and general manager of PRN? When did that happen?
Oh, I was hired in '88. I think that happened about 10 years later, that Humpy Wheeler, who was my boss at that time, promoted me. And then later on, Jerry Horn, who is our head of sales, is actually now the general manager, and I'm the president. Jerry is over all of the things that bring in money, because that's not my purview. I'm a broadcaster, and Jerry's very good at the sales side, and we work tremendously together. But so much of my job, being the anchor, is how do we integrate the sales message into the broadcast without messing up the broadcast. NASCAR fans are very forgiving because they know product placement and sponsor mentions are a part of it, but you can't ever let that get in the way of calling the action. And that's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah, it definitely, because everybody knows that a driver in victory lane is going to throw out their 17 sponsors on a fire suit. So it's, and you normally, I hear you guys normally, it's whether it's through a caution or a long green flag run, that's kind of where you're looking to throw that into, I'm guessing.
Well, we try to not let that override the broadcast, but obviously it's important because sponsors pay us a nice chunk of change to get those mentions. That's one thing about stage racing that's been nice, is that there are built-in places to play commercials that don't take away the time from us covering live action. While we're in a stage break, they're riding around the racetrack. We can present our sponsors commercials, come back, cover the pit stops, and then do another round of commercials. And that means we have more time when we get back to racing to actually cover the action without missing anything.
So, not as a broadcaster, but as a fan, do you like stage racing? Because you've been around, a long time before the stages were here. What's your take on it? Do you like what it does to the action?
I like stage racing to a point. I don't know that we need stage racing at our road courses. I just don't know that I don't think it's necessary. I would keep the stages and award the points and give out all the goodies after lap 25, but you keep racing. You don't have to pit. I think it takes some of the strategy play out of the road course races by saying, okay, at lap 25, we're going to throw the caution. And I think it creates a situation where the teams have to totally rethink how they tackle those races. I think on the oval tracks, it works perfectly because, let's face it, the best part of every race is a restart. This guarantees at least 2 restarts a race.
That is true. I heard this morning, and I'll pick your brain as well. I heard it on the drive to work. So they brought up the fact of having two races at the track where you have the championship, where for the longest time, Homestead was your solo track. Nobody had a playbook for Homestead. Now before that, it was Atlanta. Atlanta was the two races there. Are you good? Would you rather have that one race as your championship race, or are you okay with them going to Phoenix and then going back to Phoenix later?
I'm good with them going back to Phoenix right now, because by the time they go back out there in early winter, late fall, it's a different racetrack. The weather is going to be different. How that track reacts is going to be different. I mean, I think you saw that the other day when the last time we were at Phoenix before this past week. Chase Elliott was untouchable. Well, we go out there and he's just average. He had a good day, but he wasn't the guy that we had to beat. And that's because of track conditions and the way everybody reacts to it. So I'm okay with that. I did think Homestead provided some really good races. I was a little worried about when we went to Phoenix, but I thought last year's race had a really good payoff also. But I would like to see them continue to move that around. I wouldn't mind seeing some other racetracks get a shot at hosting the season finale.
Would that be the same instance for the All-Star race, you think? Charlotte had it, Bristol had it last year, Texas has had it this year. I would think that could be one of those races that you can move around a little bit easier than the championship, I would think.
I think that'll get moved around a good bit. I think we're seeing the start of this. I have a feeling Texas will probably get it for another couple of years, just because they're not going to want to give it to them 1 year and take it away. Mm-hmm. And we'll have to see how this COTA thing plays out, because one of the races from Texas Motor Speedway has been moved to the Circuit of the Americas.
Is that why y'all got the broadcast, because of Texas giving? Okay. Yeah. I was wondering
because that would have been a second Texas race, or the first Cup race in Texas. So that's why PRN gets that broadcast.
So let me. Okay.
I was just going to say, does Speedway do they have ownership in COTA, or what is ownership and management like of that facility? Because I know it's only
Nathan, as far as I know, that it's kind of above my pay grade. It is a glorified track rental that Speedway Motorsports is renting that facility for that amount of time to stage this race. So that's about all I know about it, and all I want to know about it. Yeah. The fact that we're going there and broadcasting the race, and it's going to take an enormous amount of people, that's keeping me busy enough without knowing the minutia behind the scenes.
3 miles. I mean, are y'all going to have, I always wondered, y'all going to have to bring in more people as far as turns and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Is that one of those ones that gets allowed?
We haven't even decided yet how many folks it's going to take. And I went down there and did a site tour, and our engineers are going to go back in a couple of weeks and tour it again to see exactly how many folks it's going to take to call that action.
If you need anybody.
Are you going to be down there?
Appreciate that, Nathan. It's funny. I put out on a Facebook post. I put out on a Facebook post that it's going to be the biggest crew PRN's ever used. And within a day, I got a dozen inquiries from people. Some I knew, some I'd never heard of, saying, hey, if you need another person, put me in, coach. There's a lot of folks that want to do this. I don't blame them.
I'm cheaper than them, I promise you.
Yeah, it's a cool way to make a living.
Beer. I think Leighton Sybil from JD Motorsports, Sibile, we had him on a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about Road America, I believe, or Mid-Ohio, and he had mentioned that he might need an extra spotter, and Nathan got all giddy on that one too. So
well, those are big tracks. I've not been to either of those tracks. I may make just a Doug Rice trip up to Road America just to check that out. If I'm not allowed in because I'm not essential, I may just go up as a fan.
All right, so I heard this today. Claire was talking about it. What is your take on this number issue? Are you good with the number being in the center, or are they talking about pushing it back?
Well, I know they did that in the All-Star race last year at Bristol, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And they moved it back, and there was a lot of brouhaha about that. But I don't remember in watching that race that I'm going like, oh, they moved the number. This is horrible. I don't care. As long as I can see the number clearly, for me, the number on top of the car is much more important in the line of work that I do than the ones on the side. And I will say this, if moving that back makes that easier for these race teams to sell sponsorship, then move the thing back.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Obviously, I don't know him personally. I'm assuming that you do probably quite well. Kenny Wallace, hilarious gentleman. He has been entertaining me since I was a kid. I was convinced. I drew my own conclusion when I was a kid that there were two reasons that Kenny Wallace was a Cup Series driver: because he was Rusty's brother and because he was entertaining. He was the comedic relief of NASCAR. We've got a couple of guys, Clint Boyer, some of these other guys that are hilarious off the track. Obviously, but that's what I thought Kenny Wallace was. 5-year-old me was like, well, this guy's here to have fun, and I've followed him ever since and have been entertained by him ever since. And he posted a video on Twitter probably 2 days ago.
Yeah, it was 2 days ago.
Absolutely dragging these folks, getting all up in arms about if they move the number, that's it. I'm done. I'm done being a fan.
I'm done with NASCAR.
Yeah, I'm done with NASCAR.
I love Kenny Wallace,
and he just his comedic sense. Doug, if you've not seen the video, and any of our viewers at home,
I'll go watch.
Anybody listening, if you've not seen the video, you've got to go find it because it's hilarious. It's because he doesn't say much. It's just him and his persona and that big, excuse my language, shit-eating grin on his face, and it's just hilarious, and everything about it. But it emulates exactly how I feel. To your point, NASCAR is a sport. Granted, it's for the fans, as any sport is. Without the fans, it wouldn't exist. But without the sponsors, it wouldn't exist either. This is a very expensive sport. And so what these fans have got to understand is that if the teams can accommodate the sponsors without taking away from the fan experience, they're going to do it every single time. And they're good to do that because it keeps the sport going. It keeps the money flowing. And to your point, I agree with you. If moving that number back accommodates sponsors and allow these teams to sell more of the side panel of that car and make a little bit more money or get a little bit more support or interest from a prospective sponsor, let them do it. Because I'll tell you, I was in the stands at the All-Star race, and those cars were pretty good looking. And a lot of them were identical to their normal paint schemes, just with the number moved back, and anything that was in that back part of the panel moved forward a little bit. That's about it. Kevin Harvick's Busch Light Apple car looked identical to the one he ran, 3 weeks later when he pulled that car back out. And they looked great. Not granted, the lights in the back were maybe a little bit of a distraction to make people shut up about the numbers. I personally liked the lights. I thought they were cool for the All-Star race, kind of like when hockey used to have that light up trail that used to follow the puck around the screen. Of course, when I was a kid, I thought that the players could see that. I just thought it would happen, but
just like football players could see the first down line.
Yeah,
I caught a lot of flack because I like the lights. If they want to do that again, my only thing is put more lights on them and do away with the lights corresponding with the manufacturer. Have the lights correspond to the sponsor.
Yeah, to the paint
and
scheme.
really give that car. That's the yellow car. Joey Logano's car has yellow lights because it's the Pennzoil car. But I think that's the All-Star race is where NASCAR experiments, and a lot of things that they do at the All-Star race later on become laws, just like the choose rule with the choose cone. Now they tried that at the All-Star race and they found out, okay, this works, and so now it's the law of the land, and that's what you do with that particular race.
Well, I do know I was so I am very well known in my social network as a massive NASCAR fan, even well before we started this little foray into our podcasting and broadcasting on 4 Laps Down. And so I'm the guy that anytime NASCAR leaks into the general subculture outside of our little bubble, I'm the guy people are texting about it. When McDowell won the Daytona 500, I got texts from people that I didn't know even knew what NASCAR was. Oh my God, were you watching that race? I probably got 25 different texts from people asking me, hey, are you watching this race on TV? When they start putting lights on these cars, this is pretty neat, And I think it's things like that get eyeballs, it gets viewers. And I could see them doing it a long time, I could see them doing it in a number of races. I think they probably would stick it to non-points races, at least I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a gimmick, but that's what the All-Star race is all about, is gimmicks. and sometimes they work, and NASCAR hauls them over into the regular season. But if you're going to go lights, go all lights. Don't just go rear lights, and let them run the color that they want to run.
So you're saying a full underglow, front, sides, back,
Yes,
everything.
absolutely. But it needs to tie to the sponsor. It doesn't need to tie blue is Toyota and green is Chevy and red is Ford. It needs to be across the board. Let the teams do what they want.
Why they did that?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. Not realizing that it was specific to the manufacturer.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. I mean, being there in person and seeing it live, it looked really, really cool. I think it was probably more of a neat thing to be there and see it than it would have maybe been on TV. But I think it was pretty neat. Doug, we really appreciate you coming on tonight. You're a legend of the sport. We are, a couple of weeks into our very first season of recording this podcast, and we never dreamed somebody of your status would be willing to come hang out with us. So we are eternally grateful, and we thank you for that.
I appreciate the opportunity to go bench racing, and I'll tell one quick story here before we wrap. I worked at a local radio station, and we had a chance for the Atlanta Braves announcers to call in, and I got to do an interview with them. And I remember that very clearly, and I thought, if I'm ever in that situation somewhere way down the line that I can return that favor, I'm going to do that. And so I seldom turn down things and opportunities. One, I want to be a good ambassador for PRN and for the sport. And, if this helps you guys grow this just a little bit, then all the better.
No, absolutely. It means the world. Like I said, it as a broadcasting major and somebody that focuses on this now, I don't do it in my.
So Daniel, where did you go to school?
I went to the University of North Carolina at Pembroke.
Okay.
So I was under the UNC umbrella. I was down there from 2008 to 2012. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in journalism with a focus on broadcasting. I did some sports information stuff for Francis Marion College down in Florence, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Did some broadcasting for them. I did it for Pembroke as well. Family life kind of came about, and it was okay. Well, nothing was going on for about a year as far as broadcasting times, which in the world we are today, it. I mean, if you give somebody a microphone, a camera, you can be on YouTube, you can be on TikTok, Instagram, and you're a broadcaster, where it's a lot different back then. But when you started, if you had the talent, it was noticed and they put forth the best talent. Here it's just, if you've got the equipment, you take advantage of it. So it was really tough as far as kind of getting through there. So that's when law enforcement poked its head through the door, and I've been running with that ever since.
Well, we're proud of you. Thanks for the great work that you do, and thanks for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'll be down there in May. I'll get up with you when I get down there.
Okay, bring me a 4 Laps Down T-shirt, XL.
I got absolutely.
You might see one. You might see one show up in the mail before that, Doug. So send
right.
send us.
This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. I love bench racing and love talking about this sport.
Yeah, well, send us an address through your social media and a private message. And before we get off here, Doug, is there anything, any special projects or causes that you care about or that you're involved with that you want to take an opportunity just to make sure our viewers at home know about?
I do a lot of work through my church, and we support a lot of local things. I just became a board member for an American Cancer Society group working out of Charlotte because I'm a prostate cancer survivor. And so I'm working on that. So if people have a chance to support the American Cancer Society, that's a very worthwhile cause, because I think in COVID times, we've forgotten that people get sick of a lot of other things too. And
absolutely.
COVID-19 is not the only thing that is inflicting pain on people these days. And I think that somehow or another, we may have forgotten that during this time. So, but I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and, let's do it again, and let's go down to Atlanta, and then we'll go up to Bristol and play in the dirt.
Let's do it. I'm looking forward.
Before we end, happy birthday.
Yes. Happy
Thank you very
birthday,
much.
Mr. Rice. Thank you.
Hey.
Yay.
What a guy. He's a legend of the sport, and he comes on to hang out with us nobodies on his birthday, no
On
less.
his birthday.
On his birthday. So hey, is everybody drinking green beer today to celebrate your birthday? Was that the whole thing? Is that what's going on?
If it started out that way, I'm fine with it. I've never been the big green beer guy because having St. Patrick's Day birthday, there's been a lot of it around.
Yeah.
I've kind of moved into being a wine guy, and I'm not going to put food coloring in my white wine.
No,
that's just not happening.
No, I wouldn't.
There you go.
I don't. Truthfully, I almost think it's disrespectful to Busch Light to put green food coloring in that. I'll do it one day a year, but I don't have to like it.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
But,
yeah, we all have our standards.
Yeah.
There you
Guys,
go.
thanks so much.
Hey.
Y'all take care.
We'll
Thank
see
you,
you,
Mr.
Doug.
Doug.
Thank you, sir.
Peace out.
Oh.
How cool is that?
Man, I'm telling you, you can see the smile on my face from ear to ear. It just means a lot. To hear it coming from him I was going to ask him about a Dale Earnhardt story, but I zoned out. I got so wrapped up, but you hear it from him. He came up from, the small market stuff and understanding that people in this position where we are with our viewers that are watching, it takes a minute to get to where he's at. So anytime he can give back to people, that's what's the coolest thing ever. Just an hour of his time. We spent tonight. We covered so many gambits of racing. We talked about his history. We talked about dirt racing in the next 2 weeks. We covered it all. What he does, what he likes, jumping out of planes, flying in airplanes, calling the Indianapolis 500. What else could you ask for?
Pretty neat. Well, as always, we want to give a special shout out to all of our viewers, everybody that's tuned in tonight. Thanks for hanging out with us. There's a lot of dumb stuff you could be watching online or doing with your time. You're hanging out with us right here at 4 Laps Down. We plan on keep doing this. We've got a number of guests lined up in the coming weeks. Don't forget, we are, in the near future, going to be condensing these episodes down to audio podcasts available at your traditional podcast outlets. I don't know exactly which ones yet, but we will be getting that information to you. Just kind of getting the technical side of that all worked out. But like I tell all of our guests before we go live, this is kind of like we're recording it for a podcast in front of a live studio audience. You guys are here hanging out with us, asking questions from the chat. There's no other way I'd rather do this. I know, our buddies over at the racing table, they get together once a week and they sit in a room and talk and they have fun. They have a lot of fun. But how much more fun do we have because we're here talking, doing the same thing, but we're here with all of you. So thank you for jumping in. Thanks to our buddies over at the racing table. They tune in every week and watch our show. Chris Womack, big shout out to you. Dirty Woe, building bullets for Atlanta, he told me. So looking forward to the race weekend this week. And be sure to tune in next week. We'll be making announcements later this week about the next couple of guests that are coming up. We're just getting some particulars, put in order here. And as always, be sure to follow us on all the socials. Twitter, at 4 Laps Down. Facebook, at 4 Laps Down. Instagram, at 4 Laps Down. We're going to be getting more active on Instagram here in the coming weeks. And we're going to be moving our merchandise over to an online store type setup to make it easier to order. We do still have inventory of shirts, hoodies, camo shirts, short sleeve, long sleeve, whatever you want. So if you want some swag, reach out to us, send us a message. We'll get you hooked up. And, it's pretty nice stuff, pretty affordable as well. We're definitely not the top end of the market. So
no, but it's regardless. Who knows what could come next. I believe it was yesterday. I think I bought my Jonathan Morrissey Richmar florist hat and shirt. They've started merchandise, so congrats on that.
Big news from Richmar today. That was pretty cool to see.
Man,
I'm
that's
looking forward
huge.
to seeing that. And I think, Richmar's been a great sponsor for a lot of guys at a lot of different levels of racing, not just NASCAR,
Absolutely.
but racing in general. And Victory Lane has so far eluded them, but methinks no more. I think it's going to happen.
I'm telling you, this truck race is starting to brew into some interesting people, that are, including Larson. You got Truex. I think Harvick is going to be in the truck.
Yeah, so you got Harvick, Truex, Stuart Friesen obviously is a normal truck driver, but he and his wife are both racing. They're dirt drivers first and foremost.
Yep.
Stuart Friesen's actually making his Cup debut, but he's going to run the Cup race in the 77, so that's pretty cool. Ryan Newman announced today that he's going to attempt to qualify. You're going to have 36 trucks qualify in. I think you're going to have north of 45 trucks show up to try to qualify. You know, you're going to have the teams that have thus
Chase
far.
Briscoe, by the way.
What's that?
Chase Briscoe also going to be in the Rover truck.
Yep, Chase Briscoe is going to be there. It wouldn't surprise me to see, maybe Ty Dillon find a ride. He's been a truck winner at Eldora in the past. So we'll see. It's going to be a lot of fun. But be sure to tune in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be.
Yeah, we got a lot of fun guests. And I've the messages that I've been the people that I've been reaching out to include drivers, crew chiefs, you name it. I've been talking to them, so I'm excited. Truck owners, reaching them all.
All right. Well, with that being said, guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll be live next week, and be sure to, if you liked what you saw tonight, be sure to share the post with your friends. Anybody who's a NASCAR fan is definitely going to enjoy hearing from Mr. Rice. It's not about us. We just like being able to provide an opportunity for these guys to have a platform. So with that being said, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.